Hey guys, it's your girl Sam. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Elite Life with Sam. So, this week's episode was supposed to be something completely different. I had intended to talk about balancing business and personal life. I wanted to talk about how I find time to do it all as a multiple business owner, mom, wife, friend, sister, podcast host, so on and so forth. But that wouldn't have been as authentic as what I'm going to talk about today. So I sat in my car looking at my notes app, trying to get myself in order, and I thought to myself, who do you think you are, Miss Ma'am? What makes you think you're qualified to do this? I felt that really familiar drop in my gut, that catch in my throat. It's the, oh God, it's happening again. Just when I'm on a roll of positivity and positive thinking, there she is, ready to jump out from behind the next corner, catching me off guard. So, who is she? Imposter syndrome. So let's identify her. She's that voice in your head that whispers, you aren't good enough. You're not ready. They're going to find out that you're a fraud. She might sound like you, but here's the catch. She isn't you. She may seem like the enemy, but in reality, she isn't. So let me break this down. She's actually a protector. She showed up at some point in your past when you needed to be small or quiet or perfect to stay safe. You had to figure out how to get ahead of the ball and check off all of those boxes before anyone else could swoop in and pull the rug out from under you. She kept you standing. So when I was young, my parents had a tumultuous relationship. My dad was a contractor and my mom was a stay-at-home mom, both of whom struggled with undiagnosed mental illnesses that were years away from being diagnosed. So I was a tow-headed little ADHD riddled ball of energy. I would open my eyes in the morning and neither my mouth or my body was still until bedtime. So that's a really bad combination, girls. So my mom was already overstimulated and overwhelmed, and I'm sure you can imagine how the days went kind of in our household. Constant demands for peace and quiet through gritted teeth and threats of swats or full blown spankings. Lots of wait until your dad gets home, and then he would. I could tell what kind of mood he was in by the way his truck hit the driveway. Long days in the Florida summer heat on the job sites meant the evenings were intended to be quiet and a refuge from his day. So I learned really early on that I was to be still, good, and quiet. But that's just not what came natural to me. It's not the way God rolled this joint, people. So little imposter syndrome was birthed to help keep me on the straight and narrow. Does that sound familiar at all? But listen, I promise there's a silver lining. You don't need her anymore. Quite the opposite, actually. You and the world need your voice to be big and loud. The things you have to say need to be said. So here's what mine says. You're just a frumpy wife and mom. You aren't really that unique or entertaining. You don't have any formal training. You're gonna ruin your business. My imposter, well, she's just straight up mean. But damn, she's convincing. She's a master at arguing, and sometimes she's believable. But it's just not the truth. She just sounds familiar, and that's why I tend to believe her. Imposter syndrome is rooted in fear of being seen, fear of being judged, fear of failing. It comes from being told to stay small, stay quiet, sit down, don't make waves, stay in your lane. It comes from being praised only when you're perfect, from being punished when you take up too much space. So now every time we grow, she shows up to keep us safe. But safe isn't the same thing as being fulfilled. So now when she shows up, I do three things. I recognize her and I thank her. Literally as simple as saying, hey girl, there you are. Yeah, what I'm about to do is really making you nervous, and I get that. And I know you've always kept me safe in the past. I've learned to talk to her like an old friend because that's kind of what she is now. She's a version of me that learned to stay small and safe. She thinks she's helping, so I thank her. Then I talk back and tell her the truth. Things like, Listen, Lucy, I'm not a scared little girl anymore. I'm no longer the woman that needed to make herself invisible or likable to survive. I don't need to apologize for taking up space anymore. I've learned, I've earned this room. I've earned this mic. I've earned the right to fully show up, even while I'm still learning. And then I take the step anyways, because courage isn't always loud. It's not always flashy. Sometimes it's quiet and has shaky hands and dry mouth and gets nervous peas, but I do it anyways because that's growth. That's how I'll rewire my brain and make new examples to tell myself. I'll look back and remind myself of all the times that making the choice not to stay safe was the most amazing choice I could have made. Here's the reality. Imposter syndrome only shows up when you're about to do something really big. She doesn't show up when you're stuck or in your comfort zone. She doesn't show up when you're shrinking to make other people feel good or people pleasing. She shows up when you're raising your voice to be heard, when you're taking up space that is rightfully yours but has been compromised away. She is proof that you're expanding. So, what would happen if you stopped seeing imposter syndrome as a red flag, but instead saw her as a big flashing neon light telling you that you're on the right track? What would you say yes to more and no to less? What boundary would you erect like an iron wall? What impact could you make in your own life, your community, hell, the world? Here are some mantras that you can start with when you feel her start to peek up behind the bushes at you. I am allowed to grow into my greatest potential. I don't need to wait until I feel ready. I'm already worthy. So, if you've ever felt like me, like everyone has at some point or another in their life, listen. You aren't broken. You aren't less than. You're just becoming. Becoming what? Fill in the blank for yourself, my friend, because it's you who gets to write your story from here on out, not the voices or the vices. Is it scary? You bet your ass. But ask me if it's worth it. Yep, every damn second. So, thanks for tuning in today to this extremely raw and real episode, and I hope you leave a little better than when you came. And as always, I would love to hear from you in a review or a message on all of my socials. Elite Life with Sam. Love ya. Mean it.